So, Grandpa, is you early in late 1941? You were not quite yet in an active Marine, and Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. What memories do you have as you traveled to Pearl Harbor on your way to active duty?
Well, it was my first experience of going into combat. There was something that I had never actually had to face up to. And when we got into Pearl Harbor and realized the story behind the Pearl Harbor, we had a humbling experience of knowing that we were going out to combat for real. And I went from there into the other parts of the combat area, and that was a tremendous experience. The element of Pearl Harbor, I happened to be at home when the early announcement of the bombing on Pearl Harbor, so it had a special meaning to me. But Pearl Harbor and the early days of the war were very, very important, and it was for real.
Some of these questions were developed by Jack and Cameron, who are sitting up here. And so, one of your responsibilities was as a forward air observer for the artillery, which meant you shot the really large guns that shoot shells over many miles of distance at enemy positions. Beyond shooting those, as a forward air observer, you were responsible for helping the troops that were actually firing the guns to calibrate their weapons. How did you use math and other calculations in your work?
Well, the element of fire effect and fire of the howitzers, you have to have someone up front to guide and tell you where to go. And that was one of the major assignments I had as being a forward observer on the front lines. And actually, in so doing, we had the responsibility of actually hitting our targets. And the actual experience was something that was, if I might say, noisy and hard to work with because the shells were so heavy and large. But we had people who were trained to do these things, and it was wonderful to know that that was the challenge of the day, was to keep the enemy afraid of us. And we did just that.
Many of the students here, including my children, wanted to know, how many bullets do you think you shot while the time you were a Marine?
The Marine or in the training?
Or in battle?
In battle, mine were primarily howitzers, and we had several bonsai attacks against us, and we had the opportunity of taking the howitzers and point it lay flat and shooting direct fire, and in so doing we were able to accomplish a very serious counterattack, or they call it a bonsai, a suicide attack, and that was one of the highlights of my life, of actually shooting the howitzers and seeing the effect of it.
Did you ever shoot a bazooka?
In training, only in training. We trained them all.
Did you ever throw a grenade?
Yes, I did. And I always felt respect for the grenade, because those things were serious and they were deadly. Yes, I did some, but it was primarily for my own protection.
What did you do when you were scared as you were in battle? How did you deal with your fear?
I prayed. I'll be honest with you. When you've got these things happening towards you, and people wanting to take your life, you start really being close to the Lord. And I think that actually the experiences that we have had in the service were character building, because it made us really appreciate what we have in the way of the things that are going on in our world today.
So when you were a Marine, there are two different classes of soldiers and airmen and people who serve in our military. There are officers and there are others. Jack had a question that was related to that. Officers and enlisted men.
What is the difference between an officer and an enlisted Marine?
A lot. We have lots of hard training as a Marine period. And then a lot of our special skills, we did a lot of special training as officers, and they were given the privilege of being an officer. And then they had enlisted men who would help carry out the mission. But it was a very, very important experience because we worked together as a team.
Each day we raise the flag over our school. What do you think about when you see the flag being raised?
Well, the flag is near and dear to me. When I was in your age, I had the privilege of being a keeper of the flag and raising the flag at the school. We did it quite differently in those days, but we did it very, very seriously. And as we grew up, we had a tremendous appreciation for the flag. Now, I'll have to admit that I've been very sensitive to the flag because I had the privilege of seeing the flag raised on Saipan, Tinian, Okinawa, and Iwo Jima. There's a picture up there. You may remember this picture that's so popular, and that was a very hard-won occasion. And it was a wonderful thing, because when we got a chance to see that flag, we realized that we were winning with that particular part. And it was very near to us. And when we got through raising that flag, it had the effect of all the ships that were there waiting to get unloaded onto the island. It was actually everybody who was within earshot were blowing their horns and cheering because of the fact that we were almost ready to be beaten. And we were able to have that flag, and it actually, by all of those horns blowing, so on the fourth day, everybody got their battery charged, and it was a great experience because everybody did their job. And we were in another 30 days to conquering that island after the fourth day, when this took place.
Here at Legacy, we are studying 7 Habits of a Happy Kid. These are principles that help children be happy and help success later in life. One of those principles is called the need to sharpen the saw. Jack has a question about this concept.
We are learning about the need to sharpen the saw. What % of the time did you spend in training versus actual fighting?
Well, I actually was trained, I was in the ROTC program at the high school. I was involved with the ROTC at the University of Utah. I was a cadet colonel there, and I was able to be trained, and all the training I had was meant to be for the combat we were headed for.
How can we best honor veterans like you?
How can you best honor veterans? Exactly what you're doing today. One of the things that I have is a love for the flag. And please take the time to understand the meaning of the flag. It is very special to all of us. We had occasions to see the enemy trying to take away our flags, and we were able to take and solve that by being working together. But the flag, and if you will, keep doing the flag ceremony in your schools, and take the time, leaders, to have everybody know the story of the Star-Spangled Banner. It's very, very important.
Earlier we mentioned that you're 94 years old. What do you do each morning outside of your house?
I have, ever since I came back from combat, I have taken the privilege of taking my flag and putting it out in front of my home, and I give it a hand salute like we did today. And then in the evening, I take the flag down, give it a salute. And that makes me appreciate the country that we're living in. And the fact is that you are learning also. Thank you, especially for you teachers.
When we were in Washington, D.C., we had many people came up to thank my grandfather for the service that he provided. And there are several people here today in uniform, and we're also grateful for their service. So in conclusion today, we're going to watch a video of all these people coming up and approaching my grandfather and many people like him to give gratitude for the service they provided.